Hi, this is Peter Gustinello from SaratogaWine.com. I'm here with Rick and John from Albany Distilling, and today we're going to go through all their distillation processes, their product lineup, and their evolution of the company.
Great wine.
Better prices.
Delivered right to your door.
SaratogaWine.com.
I'm here today with John and Rick, the co-founders of Albany Distilling, and I'd like John to take us through a little bit of the history and backstory of Albany Distilling.
Great. So we started about 10 years ago, 2011. It took about a year to get up and running, so we're about 10 years into actual production. We started because a law was passed in New York State to allow for small distilleries, and I was excited that Albany would have a distillery at some point, and after a few years, nobody opened it, and I thought, maybe I should do this, and here we are. So that was, I said, 2011, and then Rick came on 2014, a few years later.
And you guys are one of the first?
We're the first in Albany, first legal distillery in Albany since Prohibition.
Wow.
Yeah.
And Rick, how did you stumble upon Albany Distilling?
So I came in, as Johnny said, in 2014. I have a brewing background, so I had worked for a couple breweries over the years, studied brewing in Germany. When I came in, it was no more than a week where I was just like, no, I love this. I love what they're doing. I love what the foundation that Johnny has built, and I want to be a part of it for the long haul. So here I am, 8, almost 9 years later.
Where did you start? What was the beginning process? Like, what was the first thing you gravitated towards?
So bourbon was where we really got our start, for the sole reason that it's the most, one of the most popular spirits out there. Especially from being from New York, we've got phenomenal grain growing here. Way back 10 years ago, it was actually tough to find anything grown in New York State. But fortunately, because we have such a strong dairy industry, there's a ton of corn here for cattle feed. So bourbon was an easy
natural fit.
Exactly. Yep. Then not long after we moved into the space, we learned that just around the corner, 100 yards away, was the site of the first distillery in Albany from the 1750s.
Oh wow!
And they were making rum. Yeah. So we figured, we're right in the neighborhood. We can't not make rum. So the Quackenbush Dow Stillhouse was what it's called. So our next product was the Quackenbush rum. So once we started doing the rum, we realized that there's demand for a broader range of things. It took us a little while, and then eventually we branched off into the vodka and the ready drinks too.
It's interesting to me because the route to money, easy money in the beginning, is usually the quickest distilled thing on the market, vodka, right? It's just a neutral grain spirit. Mixability, it can kind of be a little off if you're mixing it with cranberry or anything else you want to do. And then they graduate up into aged spirits, including whiskey and aged rums. So for you guys to start from your focus point was the hardest thing because it's time, and effort and the grain structure and all that stuff, and then go down into the vodka category, which is not a down step. It's just your primary focus was bourbon and whiskeys.
I think it's passion,
Right, that's exactly.
We like whiskey, we drink whiskey. Once the rum kind of story came out, but once it was discovered, it's like, damn, rum is amazing. So again, that's what we love to do. That's the passion behind it. But, vodka pays the bills. I actually have a t-shirt at the house that says that, but so it was logical for us to add that into it. But again, we started with passion, and then we kind of built the company around that story.
The other nice thing about that is it's a difficult spirit to get right. So the fact that we fine-tune our skills on one of the hardest products to make means that once we started to branch out, we already had the chops to do it well.
And make quality right from the jump.
Exactly. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So one of the key differences between now and 10 years ago is that our bourbon is now at least 4 years old, whereas a decade ago that was not the case. Our first release was 3 months old.
That is really the hard road to success, starting it off that young, but it's also great to get those interactions from your burgeoning customer base, trial and error, letting people see which direction you're going in, get the feedback. I mean, what better audience than your locals.
Exactly, and it also gave us sort of an accelerated tasting regime. We could see what flavors came out in 3 months, tweak the recipe if necessary, and then after that we went to 6 months. and then 9 months, and then 12 months, you can see them.
And you started off on 10 gallon?
10 gallons, and then we moved to 25s and 30s.
And what size barrels now?
53s, full size, occasional 59s.
Where are you sourcing your barrels from? Is it all?
A lot of them are coming from New York, actually, from Adirondack cooperage, out by Utica.
And most whiskey guys are going to want to know like a char level and toast level on your.
By sticking with the same cooperage, consistently, we use 2 different cooperages now, one for the bourbon, one for the rye, bourbon and malt. We have it dialed into their level of char, and it matches what we want the profile of the whiskeys to be.
Gotcha.
And that being said, both of them are their medium char, or certainly level 3 char, which are slightly different for the 2 different places.
And I think the grain side of it too, I mean, like you said, you talk about the barrel, you talk about the cooper, but the grain recipe, as Johnny mentioned, like we tweaked that a bunch in the beginning, because a lot of people, when they think about a barrel-aged product, logically you're going to think about that vanilla that you get from the oak. But the difference between a bourbon, a rye, and a malt, goes down to the actual grains that we're putting in the mash tun, and the level of corn or the level of rye, the level of barley, what other grains are in there to kind of support the profile. The younger the whiskey is, or fresh off the still, you can really notice such a huge difference between bourbon and rye.
With the raw distillate,
right?
The smell of it.
The longer it ages in the barrel, there's kind of just like it all centralizes to, all right, how does this interact with the wood itself?
What is the mash bill for your bourbon, your rye, and malt? Has it changed? Has the recipe changed that much now that you're 4-year aging minimum?
It has a little bit, and a lot of it has to do with where we're sourcing the grains, how we're treating them and so forth. Originally in the bourbon, we had some malted rye, which is now out. So the bourbon is now 60% corn, 25 rye, 15 malted barley. Rye has pretty much been 75% rye, 25% malted wheat from the start. And the malt is one that we're kind of playing with now even. Right now it's mostly malted barley, and then we've got some wheat and oat in there. And we're thinking about transitioning to just malt, just doing a single malt.
Oh, wow.
It's a fun thing to play with.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
First, I think we should start with the one and only Albany Distilling Co. bourbon. From my memory of it over the years, like I had the opportunity early on to try it from the early days and a couple years ago to now, and it absolutely, in the nose, it's a much cleaner, rounded whiskey.
Yeah.
I get a little bit of vanillas, a little bit of cherry, not too much. It's not like a very pronounced. That has come a long way. I got to say, this is honestly the first time I've tried it in over a year, and it's a fantastic little bourbon, man. This has come a long way.
The big jump was from 2 years to 4 years.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really where the most, I think, polishing and refinement happens, isn't that?
Yeah, it's absolutely more. It has been rounded, a little bit smoother. You don't have that really medicinal alcohol burn that you got on the younger whiskeys. You get a little bit of the oak tannin, a little bit of vanilla. And you still taste the grain. So
I think your bourbon drinkers out there, where they might drink bourbon expecting it to be a wheated bourbon, like you should drink our bourbon knowing that it is a high rye.
I like that dryness from the rye.
Yeah.
It is not a sweet whiskey. I think it's a great cocktail whiskey on the rocks. But to your point, it is unique, and I like that the dryness of it, and it's got a long finish, and you absolutely get the rye on the palate, and you get the sweetness of the corn up front, and then the rye on the finish. Cool. Let's move on. Let's get into the rye.
All right.
The cherry notes you were talking about with the bourbon.
Oh yeah.
Even more pronounced now.
Absolutely, and more graininess. You get the smell the dryness of the rye right up front. The rye is clearly defined. It's not masked at all by the wheat. It's got that old-timey flavor, like that almost like a barnyardy oak, woody. It's a hearty rye.
Yeah, and again,
but it's soft on the finish. Wow.
We get a lot of what I refer to as the baking spices too. We get some cinnamon there, some clove.
rye is such a cool whiskey that you can drink it on the rocks and you don't kind of get that to be muted in a way that you're just like missing it. It's just like, all right, I drank the rye and it's gone. Like this stuff will linger with you for
it has a long finish.
It opens up
even
nicely.
With the water, it's not going to cut it apart there. Fantastic.
The big difference between the malt and then versus the rye or the bourbon is that the malting process roasts the grain, or toasts the grain, I should say. So it really transforms that grain forwardness. It is a very traditional kind of a whiskey. And
that is complex. That has got a lot of flavor in there. I mean, you could pull out the oak and oat, not oak,
It's
oat.
super interesting to drink it right after drinking the rye because they are completely different whiskeys.
yeah.
I get a little more sweetness out of it because of the grains. More pronounced than both the bourbon and the rye, but it's not a cloyingly sweet. It's just it's there.
It's like creme brulee, like that
Right.
like really mild
Caramelized.
sweetness.
Especially if you think about what 3 grains are in there. If it's malted barley, it's going to have that kind of, well, again, it's been malted, so it's already been kind of transformed. Barley is a very plump grain, got a lot of starch in it. Wheat is that soft grain, and oat, to me, it's
a showstopper in this one.
it's unmistakable. Like you can taste oat without question, and it also provides such a cool like body to the whiskey.
Right, but they're melded together, very balanced. Like you could taste each individual grain, but the way they're composed, it's like
Another
a little harmony in there. Now, in the rum category, I see you have an aged rum here. Are you using your old barrels?
Yes. Yep. So legally for whiskey, for any of the 5 standard American whiskeys, bourbon, rye, malted rye, and wheat, it has to be a charred new barrel every time. But for rum, there is no barrel requirement either way. It's an elective process. Aging rum in a new barrel would produce sort of a very strange configuration of flavors.
Right.
So by using a used barrel, we've already stripped out the more bitter, that walnutty tannin and stuff. What's left is mostly vanillin. So that very mild oak flavor with a lot of vanillin is a really phenomenal combination.
Which pairs up well with a sugar-based distillate.
Yep.
So that distillate, white sugarcane molasses, black strap, there's all different terminologies for the core ingredient before you start the fermentation process.
Yep.
Where are you guys at?
So we use what's used to be called fancy molasses because the recipe that we are using is based on that 18th century recipe from the distillery around the corner.
Which is incredible.
Yeah, and it's a wild story. So we found a Caribbean fancy molasses to replicate this as much as possible.
Cool.
Quackenbush rum. All right, so this product is, to me, something that like when you get this product in front of like very interested like spirits nerds, like this is something that people go crazy for.
I mean, it's unmistakably rum.
This right here is the hardest thing to distill. However, to me, this is where we get all, the most praise from like those real nerds who just love.
This is a cocktail in a glass.
Oh, it's so cool.
Seriously, with all the flavors in there,
Yeah.
keep referring back to like, how you would drink this. And rum is like, one of those top spirits that's put into cocktails from daiquiris on down.
What you see in this bottle is the molasses fermented in a really challenging way, distilled in a really challenging way, and this is like as authentic as you can
The
get.
more I'm drinking it, the more I'm falling in love with it.
So this is the exact same thing. It's similar to the way we do the whiskeys, but now it's been in a barrel for a couple of years. Now, because it's a used barrel, we're still getting some of the oak, but not much. Like I said, it's mostly the vanillins, the things that are sort of left over after the whiskey has first crack at it. So it's a much subtler oak flavor. But what time in the barrel does, in this case, is it oxidizes out all those really rich, complex flavors, and it makes them a little less pronounced, but it gives them a nice...
Sauce up the phenols.
Yep, exactly. So it's still really very flavorful.
As much like focus goes into the white rum, the kind of same like we have to think about blending age rum in the same way. What we've been doing since the first rum barrel that we filled is we actually take the entire crop of rum barrels that are there. Every year we empty them all out and we add fresh white rum back to it to taste.
That's neat.
Yeah,
So it's like an infinity bottle of rum.
Yeah, so there is rum in this bottle that's 9 years old. There's some that's 8, there's some that's 7, all the way down to fresh white rum.
And you're just looking for that flavor profile, that consistency year on year.
Yeah.
You want that thread to continue through.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
You know, again, passion moves into historical discovery. Logically, those are the products that we make. You know, it's a corn-based vodka, meticulously filtered. So what we search for, or what we strive for in making our vodka, is to have something that is incredibly palatable. You know, there's other distillers who certainly want nuance or kind of character to their vodka, but you know, we like the idea of making
super clean, super crisp.
Clean. Yeah.
We're also very fortunate being in Albany is we have the alcove reservoir supplying us. So the water that we're using for it is remarkable.
So that's ALB, and then back to barrels, you know, just having this kind of, you know, this is what we were doing. Once you take a barrel and you use it, you can't use it for whiskey again. We can use it for rum.
Right.
But, you know, we were left with kind of this excess amount of whiskey barrels.
And there's only so many planters you can have in your yard.
Exactly. So Mike Brown and John Swedish from Death Wish Coffee had reached out to us and they said, hey, we're thinking of this really weird, crazy idea to do a barrel-aged coffee bean. We've done R&D and we drink a lot. We're distillers. But there is nothing that we spent more time on than perfecting coffee vodka.
Yeah, I remember when that came out. It came out of the gates hot. It was incredible.
And we really kind of landed on this idea that ALB, the vodka, is really clean. So how can we stick as much coffee into this bottle and still keep it at alcohol strength, at a vodka strength? So what we do is we actually do a lot of our filtrations high. Because again, carbon is an important part of vodka production. So we'll do all of our filtrations at about 57, 58% alcohol. And then we take a cold brew that we make with Death Wish Coffee, and we just add the cold brew to really strong vodka. And instead of blending it down with water, you know, the ABV is going to drop as you add.
You're cutting it with coffee.
Cold brew.
Exactly.
So by the end of it, you know, 40% of this bottle is cold brew coffee. And if anyone knows anything about Death Wish, it is really highly caffeinated cold brew coffee. And then the rest of it was high proof vodka. And we bring it down to a very fitting 66.6 proof because, you know.
Apropos for the
Jokes.
name.
Well, that's hilarious. Yeah.
And we should also mention that it is now called Awakened Spirit. It was Death Wish for a while, but that got too confusing for everybody.
So I was just going to ask you about that. So
People would call us looking for the coffee. We'd call them looking for the vodka.
Because two different companies, two different brands, everything else.
Yeah, and I think when we started it and it was a local product, you know, like you said, it just completely exploded onto the scene in the Capital District of New York.
Yep.
But when you're distributing that in Florida, in Illinois, in California, well, they started distributing coffee
nationally
everywhere, and so did we. We started bringing this coffee vodka into other states.
Oh, neat.
And then it just became this very challenging thing to separate. So we said, all right, the brand needs its own identity. So we came up with, well, Johnny came up with the Awakened Spirit, Wake Up, Undead, and it's still, though, made with Death Wish Coffee. It's still an awesome partnership with them. It just kind of now stands on its own as opposed to...
Makes sense. Makes absolute clear sense. You have other flavors up here.
Yeah, and again, I think that came straight from customer feedback. You know, how many times do you have someone come into the distillery saying, I really love your vodka, I really love your coffee vodka, but I drink orange vodka. And you hear that enough, you're like, all right, I guess we're going to make orange vodka.
But that's also an homage to Albany. It was Fort Orange, right? So it's like kind of ties back to the history of all of this. And the last of the lineup for now is...
Well, that was actually selfish. I didn't listen to anyone. Cucumber vodka's great.
So you just decided one day?
Honestly, when it's hot as hell,
cucumber coolers.
Cucumber vodka on the rocks, maybe splashing some club soda. Really easy to drink, and this thing has gone really well for us as well. And it's all natural flavors, so we work with a company down in, towards the city that puts together really great natural flavors. And again, the R&D was heavy on those products too.
Now, in terms of talking about it, the vodka is going to sound like a bit of an anticlimax after all the tasting notes and stuff that we had with the
But it's still the most popular spirit consumed, and people want quality in the bottle. So there's nothing wrong with distilling vodka to make money, but it sounds like you guys put a little care and effort into it.
Absolutely. I mean, and I guess it's a good thing that I don't have much to say about it. It's just clean, it's easy to drink.
What do you start with?
It's a corn base.
You get a little sweetness of the corn, and being corn, it is 100% gluten-free,
Yep.
right? All those good attributes that folks love.
Yep.
Of course.
It's made in New York.
There are vodkas that with nuance. There's vodkas with character, but like we are looking to put a product.
You're looking
in
for
front of you.
mixability.
Yeah, we want something. We want people to be able to drink the vodka and just love that it's super clean, super easy to drink.
Yep.
So this is the orange vodka. So again, we start with that same very clean base and add natural orange flavoring, and it really comes through nicely.
Question for our viewers. The flavors that you're adding to it, are those also gluten-free? Or
They are, yep. It's all gluten-free.
Gluten-free, all natural, and you know, again, any blending thing like distillation obviously has a lot to it. Fermentation, I've talked about that, but you know, when you're adding flavor additions to spirits, like you can't just add it whenever you want.
Right.
You can't just
certain
throw it
time
out.
and temperature and
So
ABV.
there is a ton that goes into it to make the spirit look clear, and so, you know, we've messed around with a lot of different variations, but we found like the correct ABV to add it, you know, the correct amounts, you know.
Yeah, it's great for cocktails, man.
Yeah.
That is. You got a mandarin orange, you got a little nectarine, it's all the
Proud
oranges.
leader for sure, yeah.
Cool.
Up here we have the cucumber. So similar to the orange in that we start with the same ALB base and then add the delightful cucumber flavoring.
I smell it from here.
Yeah, no, it's got a very potent nose to it, and then
Cucumber salad. It's like fresh chopped cucumbers, and it's a very tight category in cucumber vodka land. And I've had the opportunity to try them all. I don't drink that much, and this one tastes like the most natural. Like you actually steeped cucumbers in a distillate or muddled them. If you had the type of patience to strain that out, but it's well done.
thank you.
So Awakened Spirit, again, this is our collaboration with Death Wish Coffee. What's cool about this product is we partnered with a company that makes awesome coffee. So we make a vodka that is incredibly neutral, incredibly passive. It's like, all right, it doesn't have much flavor. Let's let this thing shine.
What's really cool is your base is corn based, right? So it's got inherent sweetness to it, which complements coffee.
And like any of the other products that I've kind of talked about, like
That's dangerous.
anyone's going to drink a product that they want to drink.
That is
right?
dangerous.
So what we tried to do is put a product in a bottle that you can still work with. So like if someone likes cream in their coffee, add cream to the coffee. If someone likes
espresso
a
martinis
lot of
all day
sweetener,
long, yeah.
go for it. It just allows you to take a very easy, you know, smooth product and kind of make it the way you want to, or just.
If you haven't tried this or you haven't heard about it, I would check out our website and dig into this. This is incredible.
Please, when you get a bottle, don't drink
responsibly.
too much. Yeah, because it's going to just be very easy to drink.
Especially if you're a coffee person and you want to, level up your Starbucks or something when you get home. This is fantastic.
Thank you. So we have a lineup of a couple different flavors of RTDs. We have the raspberry lime and the black cherry, which are, strict vodka seltzers. It's vodka, natural flavoring. We don't put a lot into it. It's clean, easy to drink. And then we started taking some of our most popular cocktails from our bar, and we just turned them into cans.
Cool.
So we have the Knickerbocker tea, which is kind of a Caribbean-style Arnold Palmer or John Daly. So it's a half and half with lemonade and tea, but it's almost has some like mango flavors to it. The Strawberry Smash has been one of our most popular cocktails since the beginning, so that's a strawberry mint. And most recently, we added the Wolf Bite to it, which is a blueberry lemonade. So all very popular.
And the Wolf Bite was developed around sports program or anything like that? With
the Firewolves, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. All these.
Available all across New York State.
New York State, all right. I just want to thank you guys again for taking the time to come up here and check out our location, and really, really impressed with how the company has progressed and your attitude towards distillation and perfecting the lineup that you have. And just a little bit, I'm kind of humbled because I've seen you guys from the beginning. Don't cry, Rick. And to come to this place that we're at now, it's been a cool journey to watch, and I'm really appreciative of the time.
It's our pleasure. Thanks so much for having us.
The lineup.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Pete.
Thank you.